I don't know how to introduce myself.
Your usual introduction. What are you talking about?
If we all say, I don't know, it just feels weird if we're all going to say, like, from Android Authority. Okay. Like,
all right.
Three times in a row.
Hey, it's Joshua Vergara from Android Authority. What's going on, everybody? And I'm joined by Lanh, as I'm sure all of you know, and some of you may know Kris, one of our writers, and also has been on a couple of videos on the YouTube channel. So, we're talking Google I/O. It's officially the first day, and it's at the Shoreline Amphitheater. As you can see, we're outside for the first time at a Google I/O.
Yeah.
How's it feel so far, guys?
It's been good. It's very laid back for sure.
Yeah.
The outdoor situation is pretty nice. The sun's out. It's not too hot. It's good.
It's not too hot. It's hot. What are you talking about?
Yeah, I'm freaking sweating over here, man.
It's not as hot as
We got
yesterday.
these canteens full of water.
Yeah. All right, well, we're going to go ahead and get right to it. It's the I/O keynote reaction. Now, there were a lot of... we're reacting, but there were a lot of announcements, rather, during the keynote, and we're going to go down the line a little bit. By the way, just so you guys know, stay tuned to the Android Authority channel. Stay tuned right here for footage of all the cool stuff, all the stuff behind us that you may or may not be able to see, because the Shoreline Amphitheater was converted into a big playground for all of the people attending I/O. So all of that will be coming in the next couple of days. And yeah, but for now, we're just going to talk about the keynote. So thoughts on the keynote, you guys?
Well, I mean, there was a lot of announcements for sure. They came pretty thick and fast. But in terms of the big sort of ground-shaking game changers, there didn't really seem to be so many this year. Not as many as in previous years. I mean, there was some big stuff. You know, Android VR, Daydream VR, Google Home. These are pretty big, but they're not. They didn't seem very far out of left field. They were things we pretty much expected and in many ways knew were coming. So.
Yeah, I think there were some. Like Kris said, there's some interesting products, but a lot of it we sort of expected. Like you said earlier, when we were talking, is a lot of it is very reactionary, and I sort of do agree with that. But then we also had a lot of polishing to Android. So nothing really too surprising because we saw a lot of it in the alpha releases, but still good to see them show it off and sort of go a little bit more in depth with what. We saw with the releases so far. So
with that, why don't we just go ahead and go down the line then? Started off with a couple of new apps made specifically for communication, Allo and Duo. Well, I say Allo, is it?
Allo as in aloe vera?
Aloe vera. Yeah.
Allo.
A-L-L-O.
A-L-L-O, yeah.
That's a very British name, actually. Allo. It's one for Narav, maybe.
So the whole idea that there's a little bit more functionality in terms of how you can communicate with people, it also ties into the not brand new, but the Google Assistant, rather, which is basically going to be a contextual back end for pretty much everything that you're doing on Android. But how did you guys feel about Allo and Duo? Duo being the video messaging service, that is.
Well, I don't know why they're two apps, for starters. I mean, why not bake them into one app? Because like you were saying, I mean, they're not going to be default apps on anything unless maybe Nexus is. But I mean, splitting them already into two already makes it harder. I know you don't really think they need to exist at all.
It's not that. Yeah, I like the functionality that Allo and Duo bring. Like Allo is really cool with the way that you can shout or whisper text messages, and you can draw on photos and. The integration with Google, being able to ask Google Now basically questions within the app itself, and all the other different things you can do with it. It's all really nice features, but it kind of makes you question why did they have to bring a whole new entire messaging app in order to do all of this? Why couldn't they just revamp Hangouts and incorporate it all into Hangouts? Because it just makes it a little bit more convoluted now when you have Hangouts and Messenger and now you have Allo.
Well, yeah, that's essentially where I'm coming from there too. It's because I use a Google Voice number, and I absolutely love using it because I use multiple devices. So if Allo is going to come in and be tied to the number you put onto there, what will happen to Google Voice? Will it still have the same functionality and whatnot? Because having Allo and Duo just kind of means that we have redundancies across Android. There's so many applications. Duo, even though it looks like a great video messaging application, it's basically what you do when you swipe left on Snapchat. It's essentially the same functionality. It's just a few refinements inside. And then Allo is just trying to make things a little more fun. But what Allo does on top of messaging is basically based on the Google Assistant. So I guess for me, I'd be more excited to get Google Assistant.
Yeah.
Because that is a lot of fun to use.
Yeah, and I mean, Google Assistant is really just Google Now, like an in-app version of Google Now, from what I understand.
Let's talk about Google Home a little bit. IoT coming to the home, I guess. Best way to put it.
Things generally.
Essentially an Amazon Echo response, right?
Yeah, it's definitely, they made it pretty clear that it's going to be an Amazon Echo competitor. I mean, they even sort of mentioned the Echo, not necessarily talking bad about it, but just saying that it's a great product and they want to have something that sort of competes with that, and that's what Google Home is going to do.
Did you like it, Kris?
I did, yeah. I thought it was pretty well done. I mean, I'm not familiar with Echo so much. I haven't used it. But I think it feels long overdue. It's sort of surprising to me that Google hasn't done this hardware hub for connected devices and Google presence in the home already. I mean, I know we've seen steps in this direction before, but it sort of feels like it's a long time overdue. It's about time Google started connecting all of the dots in one central place, and that's exactly what Google Home is.
All right. Android Wear 2.0.
About time. About time.
Well, we're going to go into it, I suppose, more in depth on what will potentially be our podcast for later this week. But kind of in a nutshell, too low, too late, do you think?
Yeah, it's hard to say. I mean, we were discussing earlier standalone apps. I mean, standalone functionality is obviously a big deal. It's a pretty big step for the platform. But for me personally, I don't go anywhere without my phone. So other than the odd occasion I go for a run and don't take my phone, I don't really see it being that significant an update for me, at least with my Android Wear.
I'm going to figure that because neither of you even wear Android Wear watches, that you'll probably. It's one of the only real concrete announcements that we really got, though.
Yeah, it's for me. Like, I sort of gave up on Android Wear and just wearables in general, like a few months ago, just because I don't know, I felt like it was more of a distraction than something that made my life easier in terms of reading notifications and things like that. But I do like some of the changes, especially the actual keyboard, the on-screen keyboard, because one thing that I've always sort of wanted with a smartwatch was to have an on-screen keyboard, and now they finally brought that feature. So I don't know, maybe it'll bring me back into Android Wear.
So Google's finally putting out their own VR platform, or rather we were discussing it earlier. We're not too sure if this is supposed to be a particular product or a platform or an API. So,
well, yeah, I mean, the whole reference design thing, it sounds like Nexus VR. So I'm still a little unsure what the ultimate game plan for that is. Is it like Android One or something? Like, I know they mentioned smartphone spec for Daydream VR ready devices, and there'll be a whole bunch of those out in the fall. But is Google going to be pushing its own hardware platform like Nexus, or is it just something it's trying to encourage other OEMs to take on with their VRs?
So I guess we're not going to be calling Android N new a whole lot after this keynote, because not really a whole lot of new stuff being told about Android N, eh?
No, not really. Well, I mean, I think Google, I don't want to say shot itself in the foot, because I totally recognize the importance of getting a preview out early to get as much feedback as possible before the final release. And I think that's great, but it really lets the wind out of Android sales at I/O for like big announcements. It's like last year, Android M was like a really big deal. Everyone was sitting in the hallways flashing it and getting excited, and it was really cool and fun. But this year it just barely rated a mention, and everyone sort of knew what was coming anyway. And I mean, dark mode is gone again.
Yeah, apparently. It was something that we discovered after the fact. They are setting up for a lot of stuff in the background. Well, maybe not them in particular, but right behind the camera is the amphitheater stage itself. And there's actually going to be a great concert tonight with a couple of headliners, like big headliners. You have Charlie XCX and Kygo, of all people. So, kudos to Google for making another great show. Just have some fun afterwards. And that's what we're gearing up for as well. So This was our rundown of the Google Keynote, the I/O Keynote for 2016. Stay tuned to Android Authority for all of the great coverage that we're going to have here. We are going to try our best to get some demos of at least a few things around, even though there weren't really device-centric announcements at the keynote. But, we are still excited about what we hear. We want to try them out, but the problem is we can't until at least the summer, at the earliest the summer for some of this stuff. I think that should pretty much do it. So, thank you guys so much for watching, and stay tuned because we are your source for all things Google I/O 2016.